Again, go through your list and just cross off anything that we've actually dealt with. Okay, Generalist OHS Professional Certification. It is being implemented by the SIA as the representative body for Generalist OHS professionals. There was a whole discussion about how this would be implemented, who would run it, who would do the certifying. There was a proposal that an independent board would be set up, or a council, or this, that and the other, comprising all the different professionals and so forth. Fortunately, sense prevailed in the end and said, listen, the ergonomists certify ergonomists, hygienists certify hygienists, doctors certify doctors. The SIA is the representative peak body for OHS generalists, for better or worse at the moment, and we should certify our own people. So the SIA will be implementing certification. We will be operationalising it and managing that process. The certification process has been developed reflecting the requirements of the international standard. So there is a quality process to ensure its integrity, to ensure that the certification process meets or reflects the requirements of that standard. Certification, as I've said a number of times, considers and assesses your experience. How long have you been in the game? What have you done? What are the industries you've worked in? What are your qualifications and capability? So part of the certification process is having to submit some assessment material. So a practitioner report, practice report, professional portfolio, or a reflective journal, depending on the level of category you want to be certified at. So this is not as simple as saying, here's my CV and here are my testament from my uni, certify me. I mean, I could do that. I can hand that to an employer for myself. I don't need an external body to confirm that I've got my qualifications and that I've worked in 10 different jobs. What certification, the whole point of it is putting people through a process where they are showing and demonstrating that they have the required capability to do the role. SIA, just by comparison at the moment, grading, SIA grading currently looks at your qualifications, your experience and maintenance of CPD. There's no formal capability assessment at the moment, correct, Phil? Phil's sitting here and I'll get him to correct me if I'm wrong. And SIA grading does not currently recognise diploma and advanced diploma levels. So certification actually widens the number of people that will have access to a certification category. So there are more people that will be certified than are graded, but they will be more appropriately put into the right category. And that's an important point as well. There are 4 categories, not levels. This is not intended to be one category is better than the other. And as I said before, we are recognising that practitioners and professionals are different animals. And they do different things and they often think quite differently. And certain people are good at one and not at another. So it's about saying what is the category that I will be allocated to. Capability, I think this is the most important element. This is the element where you are required to submit material for assessment. So providing a practice report, showing a portfolio of work, being interviewed, providing referees or providing a reflective journal depending on the level. You don't have to do all those things, it's all right. But you have to do, depending on the level of category you're being allocated to, you'll have to do some of those things. And I think, you know, that gets around this hurdle of, well, I've got my qualification and I've had 10 years in the industry or whatever, but I'm still actually not capable. And that happens, you know. Or somebody who's, I've got my qualifications and I've only been in the industry for 3 years, but I'm actually exceedingly good. So it's making sure that we are assessing what people are capable of. So here's the $1 million slide. And I think it is interesting for people to sit there and go, well, where would you fit? So the first thing is that first part of the process is to say, well, based on your qualifications and your experience, because these are fact, what category would you be allocated to? Then, once you're allocated to that category, you will need to complete the required capability assessment. So qualifications for practitioner, diploma, advanced diploma, minimum of 2 years experience, and then you'll need to do a portfolio report and provide referees. Noticing every category has to show maintenance of continuing professional development and commit to a code of ethics. Okay. You'll see there, so a certified OHS professional, degree, grad dip or master's level, 3 years experience or including 12 months post-education. It's 3 years including 12 months post-education, CPD code of ethics, and then your chartered OHS professional is PhD, masters in OHS now, and evidence of operating high level, 10 years organisation experience including 5 years in OH&S. So you have to have had an OH&S role. Not I'm the general manager of the business and part of my role was looking at safety. Okay. Reflective journal, referees interview, CPD code of ethics. So I think it's an interesting little exercise to take a minute and go, well, where do you think you would sit?
Can I just clarify, because I don't think it's what you mean,
Mm-hmm.
but it implies there be more evidence of operating at higher levels that you don't need any qualification.
Yeah, no.
So I assume that
Yeah.
means you've got a degree, grad dip or...
Yeah, sorry about that. The one thing that we are looking at though is that people who fall into this category, who don't have qualifications, we might be considering a process by which they may be able to participate in an exam process to become certified initially. Because, you know, there are people that have worked in safety for a long time. They've come from a background where, you know, they didn't get their quals and so forth. But to be honest, it would be very tightly run and it would only run for a short period of time. But we...
Just a comment on that.
Yep.
I think that actually can really undermine the integrity of this whole process. And if you look at CPAs or other professional associations, they would never allow that.
But they've been around for a lot longer. and
opportunity to learn.
I think
what's worked well for them and what hasn't. And I would be disappointed, I'd say, if an exam to me compared to sitting a master's or a grad dip is totally different.
Yeah. Look, and it is an issue. It's something that's being looked at, and there's very, very vehemently held views on both sides, as you can imagine. I tend to agree. I think this has been in the offing for 7 years. You know, it's a fair amount of time, but we don't want to lose some really good, really experienced people. And I guess because this is a new, and as I said, the other certification schemes in other professions have been around for a long time. This is very new. We want to transition as many people in, not keep people out. But your point is very well taken, and we are so conscious, and I was just having a conversation with someone about the rigour and credibility of this process is so important. Because essentially, to me, this creates a clean slate where people are being certified. It's, you know, we have to have it above reproach if it's going to have real meaning and really go forward.
Is it necessary to have that third category? I mean, why couldn't it just be practitioners and professionals?
I think just to recognise that, you know, there is, you know, those that have gone on to do that higher level of qualification, plus who have lots and lots of experience. I mean, if you look at, and actually it's a good point, sorry, what have I done here?
The objective is to say that, you know, you're professional, you're a practitioner. To add another professional category sort of...
Here we go. Look, let's look at this. So these are your 4 categories, and there's graduate as well in here. So if you look at a practitioner and what they do, and that's probably the best answer to that question, is saying a practitioner is implementer, oversight, usually on site, drive compliance, using a range of tools and processes around risk assessment, hazard identification, risk planning, all that kind of stuff. They have high degrees of technical knowledge about the specific area they're working in, and they generally would be working under supervision. They might be remote, so there might be a manager in Sydney and they're working in another area, but generally they are your on-site people working more in the trenches, I suppose. Then you've got, just put graduate aside for a sec and we'll go on. So a certified professional, this is more probably the core of the profession. So problem solvers based on conceptual and technical knowledge, analysis of evidence, critical thought, strategic planning, likely work solo or give directions. So they are your consultants, your mid-level OHS managers, those kinds of people. So, so in terms of roles, so there's a difference there between your practitioner and your professional. And then if you looked at your chartered professional, it's more like your GM, your executive manager of safety, designer of strategy, influential with senior managers. They probably have an executive position. They sit within the executive management structure. High-level specialists, strategic skills, and they consider the broader organisation. So they have more to do with business planning, that kind of stuff. Yep.
And let's say, for argument's sake, you're an engineer, you've got a grad dip in OHS and you've got a grad dip in ergonomics.
Yep.
You don't have a PhD or a master's.
Yep.
Where do you sit?
So if you've got a grad dip, you'll become a certified OHS professional.
But under that previous slide, chartered OHS professional had specialist skills, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I think it's more about like...
Or strategic skills. So
Yeah.
your economics.
It's meant to be, the role is more about that high-level helicopter view. You're not there to provide special, narrow advice.
But you're also qualified in OHS as well.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So it's not just, you've got both qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing, people wear lots of hats. I mean, I've got legal qualifications, I'm a qualified speech pathologist, I'm a qualified safety professional, like I've got lots of different things. But, you know, each one of those things stands alone. Just because I'm one doesn't make me the other. And I actually had a lawyer ask me at a conference last week, I've been working in safety for a long time doing law stuff, would I be able to be certified? And I said no, because you're not a general safety professional, you provide legal advice. Okay, just hold that thought. I'm actually going to move on a bit because I think it'll probably address some of your questions as we go. And then there's the graduate professional. And actually, when there was a lot of umming and ahhing about whether to have the graduate category, but I think it's really important because one, it gets graduates into the profession and into a professional framework, and it also flags to employers that they have to work under supervision. They haven't got the experience to be out there on their own. Okay, so I think it is an important category. Ooh, what was this one? So generalist OHS practitioner, and this is just to highlight that point about, you know, a practitioner is recognised as an important standalone role within safety. It promotes a specified role for practitioners. It has an important role in its own right. It's not just a step to being a professional. Practitioner role requires a different set of skills to an OHS professional. You know, I think the OHS professional is more focused on things like those facilitation, negotiations, as I said, you know, the high level, working at the high level of the organisation. Practitioners are much, much better at working in the trenches, working with workers, getting implementation, problem solving, all that kind of stuff. And just there'll be a communication strategy benefiting, you know, all practitioners and professionals. And I think that's going to be an important part of that process of communicating to employers. What are these things? What are these things? And what is it that you need? So that they can have a better understanding of that. Cert 4 qualified. This has been an issue right from the word go. The bottom line is Cert 4 is not a high enough qualification to be certified. However, the SIA recognises there are many, many people working in safety who have lots of experience and are Cert 4 qualified, or it's a starting point for your safety career. It's seen as like an entry-level qualification. As I said, it's not adequate for professional certification. But, you know, the thing, I suppose, is I get sort of an undercurrent of, is this elitist? Are we trying to keep people out? And it certainly isn't. It's about saying we actually want people to come into the process, but there has to be rigour to recognise, you know, when will you be certified and when are you actually just kicking off and working towards that. And Cert 4 is often the first step, you know, for people who say, oh, I might want to work in safety. So I'll go and do a Cert 4. Oh yeah, that was really good. I might continue on, but I need to get more experience and I need to get more qualifications if I want to get certified. Okay. So, the standard certification process is basically you have to complete an application. At this stage it's looking like being online. So you first of all submit your qualifications and your experience, and as I said, that will basically put you into a category which says, based on your qualifications and your experience, you fit into this category. You then need to complete whatever the assessment process is that's relevant to that category, and attend an interview if you're looking at that category. Give your referees, complete the declaration and pay the necessary fees. So that's the actual process that you need to move through. So it's pretty straightforward. Just to cover off on the related qualifications, which we sort of have, each profession is responsible for certifying its own. So if you're a hygienist, you will be certified by the hygienist, and if you want to be an IHS professional generalist, you will need to come and be certified by the SIA as well. Okay. And that was agreed to by all the professional bodies, and it on the basis that it maintains those professional boundaries. Related qualifications. If you have a related qualification, you can submit that qualification for assessment against the body of knowledge to see, does it have enough content in it to meet the requirements to be an OH&S qualification. Okay, and that will be the same for overseas. So people can say, oh, I've got a qualification in England and I've done this, can I apply for certification, and your qualification will be assessed to see if it meets the knowledge requirements under the body of knowledge. Okay. Transition. We are going to have an initial transition period, and it's called an administrative transition. It's available for 12 months. Essentially, if you are already graded by the SIA, you will be able to provide evidence of your grading, complete the ethics declaration and pay the fees. We're not requiring currently graded SIA members to go through the assessment process at this point. But you can't write in and go, I want to apply to be a certified chartered professional. You will be allocated to a category based on your qualifications and experience. So what you are graded at is actually not relevant to where you will be allocated in terms of certification. Do people follow that? Maybe quite clear there? Okay. So you'll apply for certification, you will be allocated a category. If, say for example, at the moment you are a chartered, chartered professional member of the SIA, but you come in as a practitioner level within the certification categories because you don't have the necessary qualifications, if you've got more than 5 years experience and a diploma, you can do an exam to change your certification category. So I'll go back to this slide here to make that a bit clear. So, sorry, this is a very slow computer. Yeah. So at the moment, you can be SIA graded and you are a chartered member of the institute. But when you submit your qualifications and experience, you might say, well, I've got my 3 years experience, but I've only got a diploma. Then you will actually be allocated into practitioner level, but you can then sit an exam within the next 12 months. We'll probably actually make it 2 years because it's going to take a while to get it up and running, to change your category. And that is to try and deal with people who've got high degree of experience and so forth. All right? Yes.
To clarify, Sue, are you actually saying that people who've got a PhD or a master's will automatically get a chartered OHS professional regardless of how much experience they have?
No, they have to have experience.
So they still have to get the 10, 15 years?
Oh, yeah.
5 years and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. No. So it's a combination. You've got to have the education, you've got to have the experience, and you've got to have the demonstrated capability, which is by assessment.
When you say organisational experience, that's just at management level?
Yep.
Then your 5 years of OHS on top?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So can I just ask where the 5 years came up from? Whether it's a suitable question, just given that it's looking like it's trying to capture people who are looking to perhaps move to retirement in the next maybe 10 years or so, and rather than saying to be graded as a professional, you'll need to do a degree or you can do an exam, 5 years experience seems a bit short.
Because you're trying to balance something with rigour, to say it can't be 12 months, that's silly, or 2 years or whatever, but it can't be so long as to make it impossible. What we're trying to do is say, look, you've got a minimum qualification, and look, we had lots of, I was sort of at the higher end, you know, and look, to be honest, some of this feedback is important because we may look at it and go, no, actually people are saying it could be 7 years. You know, to say, well, actually, if you're going to essentially not going and doing the high level qualification by doing an exam, well, then you have to have more experience. And I don't disagree with that.
I'm thinking perhaps in the room that it's actually been more 10, 15 years. These people have got significant experience, and so the intent is to recognise that significance of experience.
Yeah.
So I'm just, you know, maybe later it's a bit of a straw poll of people who fit in that category. And how many years of experience do you actually have? Because I've been thinking it would definitely be greater than 10 years by the sound of it.
I think it's just not making it so that it's so onerous that too many people are left out. But so it's not so light, it loses its rigour. And it's finding that balance. And this feedback is good because, you know, these are the things that do have some flexibility to say, well, if the profession is saying to us, let me just bring it up again, you know, if the profession is saying to us, well, if you want to, because effectively by sitting the exam, you are avoiding having to go and do a bachelor, a grad dip or a master's, which is a big advantage. And you say, well, actually the advantage of getting that advantage means you have to have had, say, 7 years under your belt. No, I don't disagree with that.
So
I mean,
from a lot of what you've said over the last hour, to me indicates you want numbers. You know, you want people certified. You don't want to exclude anyone. You don't want it to be elite. You want to get numbers to be certified. And I can understand why when you're starting something off that might be one driver. But the more I hear, the more it's diluting, you know, or probably taking away from people who have extensive experience and knowledge and qualifications in this space. So I think, you know, certainly from my perspective, if I decide to go down this path, I want to make sure that my experience and qualifications are acknowledged, or otherwise I think, well, why would I bother if it's just going to be a pool of people who, you know, because 5 years experience is really not much.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I think, and I agree with you. And to be honest, my personal opinion has been the bar needs to be, you know, high. Because I agree. I think that it needs to be saying this is a way of making sure that people are achieving. But safety is a kind of profession that has grown up not from an academic background. It's actually grown up through trades. So it has a different history. So inherent is that in that is perhaps a lack of gaining of education qualifications. And so we've got to balance what the reality is with how we want it to be. And I totally agree with you. And, you know, I've been one of the proponents that have said, you know, but there is a reality around who is working in the field. And we're trying to, I suppose, at the moment it's this wide. We're trying to bring it together. But I think that is excellent feedback, and that's something that needs to be considered seriously as part of, you know, how is this program going to look? Because they are the sort of things that can change, to say, actually the feedback we're getting from members is if you dilute this, it's actually not going to be seen as worthwhile, and people, and we're not after numbers, I will say that. It's not about numbers, but I guess what we're trying to avoid is the angst that people give you feedback, and there's been a lot of it, well, not a lot, but allowed feedback to say, you know, this is about academics, and this is about elitism, and this is about all that kind of stuff, which it's not. But we're trying to have that balance. But I think that's an excellent point. Sorry, yes.
I don't envy your task here in trying to identify a set of criteria. But somehow, from what I'm hearing so far, I feel like there's an orientation towards medium to large size organisations, people's experience within those. There are people, I don't agree at all with the 5 years, because I think some people can be thrown in at the deep end from day one, and their 5 years of experience is equivalent to more than perhaps other people.
But I guess that's what we're trying
So I think it has to be objective, not subjective, and therefore the second part of my question or comment is the role of the assessor.
Yeah, and we'll get onto that in a sec. We're going to cover that. Just quickly, sorry, do you want me to say the question, Dave? Yes. The question has been about, this why we're setting a requirement around experience. Some people can be thrown in the deep end. Now, that is actually what we're trying to avoid. We are trying to avoid somebody going out and getting basic qualifications or even a graduate, a tertiary qualification, and then suddenly being thrown into this independent safety role when they simply don't have...
Yes, you're talking transition for those that are already in existence. That's a future statement?
Well, that starts...
This is now.
Yes, this is now.
Yeah, so 5 years, I don't agree with it not being enough or too much or anything. I believe that a time frame is inappropriate.
So how would you...
Yeah, but that'll
But you need
do a lot of assessment.
Yes,
So
this is
making judgments based on things that they're not that familiar with. So you could come to where I work and go, well, look at how wonderful this plant is and it's totally safe. Yet Mike could walk in and go, look at X, Y, Z, P. You manage this?
Well, as I said, it goes back to the qualification.
What we're trying to do, I suppose, is look, we've got a transition time, and this is, we've got to try and take people from the old system to the new, and we're trying to implement a process by which people are supported to do that who are already graded. Okay? Because I guess the assumption is if you're already graded, you've already gone through an assessment process where you've had to demonstrate a level of qualifications, experience, capability. You've already been graded. So we're saying we're giving you credit for that. Okay? And by giving you credit for that, that means that you don't have to do the assessment element. But this is saying there will be people out there who have got the diploma. So if we go back to this diagram here, I might just keep this one up. If we go back to, this one, you say, you got your qualification here, but you've got your experience here or here.
That's right.
And you're saying, well, actually, my qualification might only be here, but I think that I have developed the capability to be up here or here. So what we're saying is you can have an assessment process to demonstrate that capability.
I don't know whether I'm happy with that. The more I hear about it coming back to me.
You see, you can please some of the people, some of the time.
I think we're sort of trying to coddle people too much. I think you land where you land, and if you want to go up to certified,
you have to go back to school.
Go back to school. I mean, that's it. Otherwise, it just corrupts the whole integrity of the whole system. And I know I'm going to drop a level. I'm going to drop a level, and I'll go, well, okay.
I need to go and do more.
If I want to go up to certified OHS professional again, I'm going to do a master's or a PhD, and that's a decision I have to make in terms of my time commitment and costs.
But there are people who hold equally as vehement a view, which is to say, there are people, and I admire your position, but there are equally people who say, hang on a minute, I've been working in safety in a technical role with lots of experience in that for a long, long time.
They're still getting recognised as a certified OHS practitioner. That means something.
But that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. They are working at this high, at this level, in this category. Transition. Who will assess applications? Okay. Basically, they will be contracted assessors. They will be paid to do the role. They will be contracted to do that. They will have to be equivalent to the level being assessed. They will have to have knowledge of the body of knowledge, and they will have to be in a position to make an assessment of the material that's being submitted to them. There will be an appeals process. So if you are not happy with the category to which you have been allocated, you will be able to appeal that. And the assessors will be required to agree to an ethics process. Now, there's been lots of issues discussed around, de-identification of applications. How do we prevent, assessors from, taking umbrage against one applicant or not? I personally think I'd like to have more faith that these are professional people who will do the professional thing. There will also be, under the ethics process, if you get an application from a colleague or a friend or whatever, you need to refer it off. You know, you can't assess your own colleagues, you know, like somebody perhaps that you sit next to or that you are good friends with or whatever. But essentially, yeah, there will be a managed assessment process and those assessors will be selected. And then there'll be an ethics process by which that happens. And then if you're not happy with the category you've been given, you can appeal.
What do you mean by qualified?
So essentially they have to be, they don't have to have teaching qualifications or anything like that, but they have to be at the same professional category that they are assessing. So if they're assessing for a practitioner level, they have to be a minimum, of a chartered professional. That's the minimum. But you are a certified professional. Sorry, I'm getting my terms mixed up here. Certified professional. And they have to have some knowledge and experience with the body of knowledge. So they will be trained, they will be given material and a framework to conduct the assessment.
So they won't be qualified assessors, they'll be qualified professionals assessing.
Yes. Good point. Good point. Yes. Yep. All right. So when will it start? It was actually sort of announced in March 2014. As I said, that's when the first rock went in the pond and we've had the waves going out ever since. Workshops are being held now, November and December. We are looking at starting graded member transitions in January 2015. So essentially those that can be transitioned over by the simplified application process.
Do we have to actually apply?
Yes. Yes, yes. So those who are graded. Now, and this goes to the point of it's voluntary. You don't have to do it. So if you are currently graded under the SIA, you don't have to be certified if you don't want to.
So one of the things you said is that you keep your SIA grade and you have an additional qualification in the certification. So it's not necessarily, a transition implies you give up one to move to the other.
Yeah.
You will be holding two tickets.
Yes.
One as a qualification, one as a...
That's on the next slide, I think. So, yeah. So, look, basically, graded members can apply for certification from January. Standard applications are likely to commence around April, and that's for ungraded new members or members. And the alternative and knowledge assessment would be commencing in June. Now, to clarify, the alternative knowledge assessment will be written and delivered by an accredited tertiary institution under the body of knowledge. So that's not going, the challenge exam ceased within the SIA about 12 months ago. And so that exam process is not being written or managed by the institute. It will be contracted to an accredited institution under the body of knowledge. So we'll have a high degree of rigour and a high degree of credibility, which is really important. So SIA grading and certification, so Kevin's point here. So we are not going to cease and say you can no longer use your SIA grade. Okay, but we will stop issuing SIA grades. Do people remember the registered safety practitioner?
Yeah.
It doesn't really exist anymore. Gone. Yeah, but no one wrote to you and said you can't use this anymore. No, it just sort of stopped, and this will be the same. SIA grading, no new grades will be issued from January 2015. But you will still be able to use your SIA post-nominal. Okay? So what will happen is we all drop off the twig. SIA grades will slowly disappear. There is no saying you can't use it anymore. Okay? Grading applications will be accepted up to the 31st of December because, as you just saw, if you are graded under the SIA, you get access to a simplified certification process. So if you want to get graded, you can do so up to the 31st of December. We'll stop on the 1st. No plan to grandfather SIA grades, and certification is voluntary. So, and you can do it at any time. You might say, okay, look, I'm actually going to get certified at the end of next year because I'm going to put in an educational program where I'm going to do my diploma, or I might do it in whatever. I mean, I had a lady ask me, she was 62, and she said, I'm probably only going to work for another 3 years. I'm with the one employer. I'm not going to change jobs. Do you think I should, and she's ungraded within the institute, do you think I should get certified? And I said, probably not. Because her employer's not going to have an issue. She's worked with them for a long time. She's got lots of experience. No one's going to suddenly come up to her and go, "You're not certified, you can't work." And she's too close to retirement to sort of go, "Well, I want to go back to school and get more qualifications." You know, and I don't see an issue with that. You know, she's quite experienced. She's been in the role for a long time, arguably doing a good job, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So there will be those people that have those sort of individual, unique circumstances. So this is not about, oh my God, on a certain date I need to freak out. It's about, this is when we're going to start, and this is when people can start moving into it. The fellow program will continue. All fellows will retain their fellow status, but there is a process by which possibly the role of fellows, what they are, who they are, and how that's being awarded, you know, may come under some review just to look at the relevance of that program and how it's actually going to work.
It looks like we've got the two systems running in parallel.
We will.
Like your SIA grading.
Yeah, we will.
Your certification.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, without a doubt. But obviously, the SIA will be putting all of its efforts into the promotion and recognition of certification. So grading will just sit there silently beside it. Okay, and the effort will be focused on promoting certification and information about certification to employers, to new members, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, moving it across. Sorry, there will be a cost. If we look at, where am I? Yeah, there will be a cost, and these are, you know, at the moment we're looking at it. So basically an admission, and these are a one-off fee. You will pay this once, you will be certified, and then your ongoing fee is the same as your SIA renewal. So there'll be no additional fees going forward. So basically an initial administrative transition, a standard application, and the alternative knowledge assessment, what we talked about was it really should be in cost terms about equivalent to one uni subject. And that's about $1,500. But it's also got to be administered, and there are costs around that as well, which the SIA has to be able to recoup. So yeah, no ongoing fees in that regard.
Can I just ask Sue,
yep.
You talked about renewal, so is it a 1 year certification, is it?
It'll be a 3-year cycle, but you renew your membership every year. So you're renewing your SIA membership, and so your certification just goes on. And every 3 years you can be asked for, or at any point in your 3-year cycle, evidence of your CPD. So, yeah, so look, you know, we are planning workshops. Sorry, Dave, yes?
I just wanted to make a comment about the cost framework that we've been looking at. The goal here is not for the SIA to turn this into a massive profit centre. It's also not to turn it into a massive cost centre. This is a program that for the SIA to be overall viable and be able to deliver high quality products, there are certain products which we look at and say we're going to subsidise that to make that work. There are other products we look at as profit centres, and there are others that we look at and we set a cost framework that allows us to meet costs. And this is one of those. So we're not here to make money. We're here to cover our costs in the process. And the costs are associated. You know, if you look at the costs and wonder if they're, I don't know if you look at them and say they were cheap or high. It depends on where you come from, because there's arguments for both of those. But they really are designed around delivering high quality assessment system to make sure that that has the standards in it that we need and that we can actually fund it.
So we're planning to deliver workshops on helping people prepare a practice report, helping them prepare a portfolio report or reflective journal, and prepare for the assessments. So people are not going to be, you know, thrown out on their own. If you've got any more issues, if you go away from today and go, well, I've got a burning question that wasn't answered, please email info@, so that comes to me. And I don't think I haven't responded to one yet. I think they've all been responded to. There is an FAQ, a frequently asked question fact sheet, on the SIA website. I have questions in an orderly fashion. Oh. Theo.
Right. The alternative knowledge assessment.
Okay, guys. The alternative knowledge assessment. Yep.
Is that for the practitioner level up to the professional level?
basically you will be able to go up to the certified professional level.
There isn't one from the professional up to the
No.
chartered level?
No. Okay, people clarify that? So if you come in at practitioner level and say, but I'm really operating in a certified professional role, then you'll be able to sit the exam to recognise that. But there isn't an exam to go from professional to certified to chartered professional.
Well, I want to jump right away back to one of the early comments you had where many companies, and I've been to some where you have your paymaster or your paymistress do the safety role because they did a unit of it in their HR qualification. One of the things that's been missing right throughout the presentation is any mention of human resources profession, which does include OHS units, not only just a single unit, but sometimes you can specialise in a stream through HR. I just wondered if you could give me a bit of an idea of how HR people sort of may blend in with what we're talking about.
They'll be the same, and I think it's a good point, and I think we probably need to add that to this slide to say, well, where does HR sort of, I mean, they certainly take an organisational view and whatever, but they would be the same as anybody else, where it's saying, if you want to be a certified safety professional, you need to go and do the additional educational requirements and get the experience in a safety role to become certified. So it's no different to, as we said, a physio, a psych, a doctor, an occupational nurse, a hygienist, a lawyer, you know, whatever it might be. What it's saying is just because you are one thing does not mean you are the other. And it's saying, have you got the necessary characteristics to be that? And you might be a HR manager who is also the safety manager and ticks all the boxes. Great, come and apply. No problem. Yeah, Ross.
My question goes to the gentleman at the back from England.
Yeah.
I'm Jim. The rigour of this will make or break us when we're trying to get qualifications in England and the UK, in England and America. Perhaps we can just reflect on what the rigour of trying to get certification on IOSH is. If we can just ask maybe a few
Phil.
words.
Can you talk about that? So in the UK, it's a qualification assessment and skills portfolio, which is what the path we've gone down. So we've looked at, sorry, I'll just chopped you off there, but yeah, so I'll get Phil to talk about that. He goes to IOSH.
Yes, if I can stand in front of that.
Sorry, Phil Lovelock. Phil is the current chair of the College of Fellows within the Institute.
And apart from being a chartered fellow of the SIA, I'm also a chartered fellow of the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health in the UK. That process is not dissimilar to the one that's being discussed here. You have to go through recognition of your qualifications, and when I went through, I've got to say that was quite difficult because my qualifications had to be sent to the UK and they were sent to some office somewhere in the UK to be assessed, and that took them something like 6 months to actually achieve. I believe they've streamlined that process since. Once that was agreed, I had to undertake various things, including an interview, which meant that I rocked up here to a place in the city, and I sat before a panel of 3 people talking into a television camera who were talking into another television camera at the other end. It was quite disconcerting in a way. But the process is very vigorous and not dissimilar to the new process that's being stated here. In terms of the US and Canada, their processes are slightly different, well, markedly different. To become a certified safety professional in the USA and registered as such by the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, you have to be just simply a professional member of the American Society of Safety Engineers. You then sit 2 examinations. One is a knowledge exam, and the second is a practice exam. Similarly, in Canada, where they have the Board of Certified Registered Safety Professionals, there is a 2-exam process. The SIA did have memorandums of understanding with IOSH and with the BCSP of the USA in relation to qualifications and experience and so forth, so that we could sort of swap qualifications, if you like, or be recognised internationally. However, because of the old certification process we had, which we didn't really have, we had a process of looking at gradings, shall we say. That did not satisfy the Americans entirely, and it did not satisfy the Canadians at all. The Americans would allow us to miss out on the knowledge exam, but we still had to do the practice exam. In terms of IOSH, there was an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, whereby if you are a chartered professional member or greater here in Australia, you could become a chartered professional, a chartered member of IOSH, and vice versa. Currently, however, the Americans and the Canadians do not recognise the Australian grading system. We are in negotiation, however, with the new process to again set a memorandum of understanding with both the BCSP and BCRSP. So I think in the next 12 months you will see those memorandums of understanding being signed and agreed to. And I think once we get to this stage that we're talking about today, you will find that the doors will open again. Well, the doors will remain open in the UK. They will open in the Americas, and they will open also in Canada. So certification from that point of view, if you're looking at working overseas, I'm sort of coming towards the end of my career, but I have done many years overseas, working in both the USA and the UK, as well as some parts of Europe. Europe is not going to look at the SIA in the same way. Germany, for example, you can have all the qualifications that you like, but if you cannot read, speak and write German, you won't be qualified. It's that simple. And some of the other European countries are the same. So that's where we're at. Yep.
Thanks, Phil.
You spoke before about how many people work in the profession with no qualifications or below that Cert 4 and below. Are you doing anything to help ease access to courses that will help people achieve those categories?
Well, as Dave mentioned, do you want to respond to that?
Well, there's a couple of things about that. We've got the accreditation board that's looking that accredits the higher education. I've prefaced in my early remarks, I've said that as far as a second stage of this process, we are going to look more deeply at the practitioner level and about the framework of the various courses that people can do in Australia, and we're looking at potentially creating a course endorsement process which has some sophistication about it. And the idea of that, take for example a Cert 4, and this is early days, so I'm speaking right off the top of my head, but you are related parties, your stakeholders. The Cert 4, there are some Cert 4s that, what would you call them? 1 out of 10, get it in a flash type thing. Then we've got the really high quality Cert 4s that provide a tremendous amount of opportunity for practical experience and working through that. We're looking at an endorsement process that allows the SIA to make assessments of what those courses actually deliver. Not too complicated, but some sophistication to it. And that ultimately feed into our understanding of where we go with possibly a future division around at the practitioner level. Now, there's a level in the USA referred to as a technician. It's one of the practitioner levels. I don't know if that's the right term here in Australia, but that's the sort of thing that the people who are going to be responsible for the governance and overview and strategic thinking about this process, who know a hell of a lot more about it than I do, are going to be thinking through and working through. In the coming year, as we roll this out, our question will be, how are we going to address that whole other level and try to get to giving people, part of that too is creating a clear pathway for people to get to the practitioner levels. If you do this, this and this, that is part of a career path, and these things are endorsed by us for you to do.
My question is the SIA doing anything to help those people who maybe don't have a diploma get access to the degrees and the grad dips and the masters based on their level of experience? Is there anything happening in that space? Because you're offering, like there's someone who might only have a diploma and you're giving them the assessment exam,
sure.
Which is helping those people get into that. But there may be people with exactly the same level of knowledge and capability
sure.
who haven't got that diploma, who don't have access to that assessment exam.
That's right.
So the only option for them is to get a degree.
Oh no, not a degree, a diploma.
A diploma. But then they still have to go and do the assessment exam on top of that.
If they want to change their category.
And they may not get that in the next 24 months.
Well, I mean, the time frame is a bit of a, let's see how that pans out. I mean, we might say, look, people are looking like they want extra time or whatever, so don't get too hung up on that. But there is a process to say, look, if I've been working in safety for 10 years, I'm very experienced, I've got no qualifications for all intents and purposes, well then I do need to go and do my diploma, and then I can sit the assessment to transition across. That's the process.
Can I just say, Mike, you've had your hand up for a long time, so I see it, and after me, you open your mouth. Okay? This goes to the heart of some of the controversy that I've heard in the last 10 weeks since I started in this role. Yeah, this particular group that you're talking about that has been one of the big controversial issues. Now, I think Sue's done an incredibly good job talking about the various ways we've tried to balance things. Now, there's a body of people, and some of them are in the room right now, who will be fundamental about expecting that certain level of education and talk about, it's not, it's there to be gained. There's another body of people who say we must do something for that group. Now, this particular level of certification as we're rolling out is going out in this form, and that's the way it is. If people want to get into those higher levels, that's not going to change. There is a lot of work and a lot of hard thinking over some years in trying to create that balance. It's not going to suit everybody. In this issue, you cannot make everybody happy. So
well, and this is this lady's point here.
Fundamental decision about it doesn't please everybody. That is the way it's going to remain. There will be, but what we're looking at reviewing is another level, the practitioner level, but it still doesn't really, even when we create that, that's still not going to address your question in its entirety, because you're talking about people who maybe don't have a diploma and will never have a diploma. If your question is, are we going to help them without them getting a diploma get to those higher levels?
No, that's not the question. My question was, is those without a diploma, is the SIA doing anything to help them get the degree or the grad dip? Because the diploma can
do it themselves.
to get access to those courses.
So, give me an example. I'm not sure what you mean. Do you want us to,
I'm just thinking about someone who spent...
Hang on. Give me an example. Wait. Give me an example of what we might do to do
I'm just thinking about someone who's worked in 20 years, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about people I know. But I'm talking about people who spent a long time in safety, who haven't necessarily got any formal qualifications in it, but have spent a long period of time doing it and have had a great deal of experience and they're highly capable. And they might be operating in those levels. Right? So, who want to get certified as a professional or chartered as a professional, but don't see the value in going and getting a diploma, would like to go and get a credit or access a master's. Right. So someone like that, with that little experience, I'm just thinking, it's quite difficult for them without any qualifications to jump into a degree or a graduate or a master's at times.
Yeah, look, I will, to answer your question, we are not planning to do anything to sort of prepare people to do uni. Okay, so like the I think you're getting study skills maybe, that kind of stuff. Look, we actually talked about running some study skills workshops, and I think it is a good point. I think there are people that have been out of education for a long time and are very nervous about, well, how am I going to go sit in exam, how am I going to go sit in lectures? Absolutely, yeah, no, I see your point.
Yeah, but I don't think
so,
it's the role of the SIA
okay, but
if an individual wants to get a qualification, he only has to look on the internet and do a little bit of research and go to the appropriate educational institution.
But I acknowledge.
And they have that facility for people.
And they do. Actually, unis are very good at providing support for, mature age students and so forth. Yes, I know. I just want to finish this one off. Okay. And I'm sad Andrew left because I think this perhaps would have addressed his issue as well. Is if you've been at home with 10 kids and been out of education for a very long time, you can feel terribly anxious about going back into that setting. And so we have thought about and looked at some study skills, potentially workshops around that. And if that was something that people started to say, that's what we would like the Institute to look at, then there's no reason why we can't look at that as a service to say, well, let's work with an institution, one of the institutions that runs the courses, to say, can you run a study skills program or a re-entry education program for our members? I think that's an excellent point. Now that we've sort of distilled it down. And I think that could be actually quite a good service or quite a good thing for us to offer to our members, to help them bridge that gap. Thank you. It took a while to work out exactly what that was about, but yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I was just asking.
Okay. We're not, and I think it's an excellent suggestion, and I think we need to take note of that day, for sure. Mike?
Sue, I just actually wanted to congratulate the Safety Institute and Sutton, because when I look at that slide up on the screen there, if I take all of us back 30 or 40 years, or we move forward 5 years for the new generation of safety people who are coming through, they will have clarity around what it means to be a safety professional. And when I look at it in that context, I think this is perfectly adequate. We have this transition thing that we need to get through, but I'm firmly of I work my butt off to get my postgrad, and I don't see why someone with a Cert 4 should be able to go and hang a shingle that says I'm the equivalent of someone who's done a postgrad. Right? And the other comment I'd make is this, is that 30 years in one job with one company does not make you an experienced safety.
Just says, it's not about how long I've been doing it or what qualifications I have. It's a combination of all of these things. And we all need to subject our knowledge to the scrutiny of others.
That's what professions do.
Yes, that's what you do as a professional. You say, I don't know what I don't know, and I think I know this and I need to get that confirmed. And it is about, and I do struggle with people who say I've been working for 20 years and I simply can't go and get any form of education. I just go, well, you're not going to be able to maintain your certification anyway because you're going to have to continue professional development. We have really worked hard to try and say we want people in, but we don't want to undermine the rigour of the process. And getting that balance has been somewhat. We've got two questions. Sorry, gentleman here with the beard. You had a question?
That's a go.
A goatee, yes.
Just a question regarding the fees. Has it been in line with, say, Rapster and Exemplar and the auditor qualifications or certification? It's a 3 yearly, whatever it is, it's a one fee. Has it been consideration for this certification program to have the, like if your SIA membership match up with the certification period, like have the option of people paying a 3 yearly membership as opposed to an annual membership to make it easy for those of us that travel around a bit?
Yeah.
Haven't looked
at it, but it's, yeah.
I think you had some funny little, I don't know what they were, what you call them, next to the numbers. I'll probably...
that means approximate.
I'll probably draw it, yeah, good. We're going to have to do some more work around that and make sure we get it just right. There's some things, to be frank, we're not where we need to be right now. You know, it's a bit of getting on a moving bus. What is great about this is we've decided to act. There's been too much waiting, too much talking, and not enough action. It's true that there are imperfections in this, and we have to deal with them as we roll it out, and the process of rolling it out will accelerate our focus on the imperfections.
Gentlemen.
So we'll clarify the costing and make sure that it's well articulated and coherent in regard to other like programs.
Gentleman from the UK, up the back.
I'm from Otway. I just thought I had that. I'm nearly Australian.
Okay.
Well, maybe not. I just want to say that this is really a great piece of work. I understand the difficulties, I understand the change that's required, and I think that change is all about when we start to see these job adverts in the Safe Search or wherever saying we want chartered members, we want certified professionals, and I think that's when you'll know when the profession's taken another step to serve business, to serve the people better. And I think only through time we'll like things like today, you'll be able to count that success in the future. So I think well done for sort of making this happen.
Look, and we are at the beginning. We are at the start. We are not at the end. And yet, I think, as I said in the beginning, there's been a little bit of a perception that, this is the end or something. It's like, no, we're actually right at the start. But, I think just as a bit of a final summing up, I think that we've done this for ourselves as a profession. No one has pushed us into it. It's certainly been supported by WorkSafe Victoria and promoted by them, and we've been encouraged to do it. We have picked up and run with the ball for ourselves. We have a process now of making sure that people have a high level of capability with both education and experience, and we can take our rightful place as a true profession. We have a clear framework for ensuring our ongoing integrity and to hold those who practice in safety accountable. And I think they're really important things. Last question, yes?
Moving on process of actually identifying and training assessors. What's the sort of process in regard to that?
Well, basically, we'll have to go through a recruitment process where essentially I think we'll be putting out, I'm probably speaking out of terms, that's a bit of an operational issue, but putting out expressions of interest, setting down minimum requirements, there will be a training process, as I said, they'll have to commit to an ethics process, there'll be training provided, there'll have to be a quality assessment going forward, making sure quality control, as well as an appeals process, so all of that, but it certainly won't be tacky. And to be honest, I think that's been a problem for the SIA over history. It's too much capping. We need to have this as a very, very transparent process where there are expressions of interest, people apply, they're assessed against criteria, they're given the required training, and then they are supervised and managed to make sure that it is all above board and all transparent going forward. Thank you. Sorry, Dave was the last word. Sorry. He's got to have the last word.
When you're working with Sue, it's very, very important to have the last word.
I think impossible.
We fight each other for the last word. I just want to particularly acknowledge Sue again for the work that she's done, Camp Prior, also Phil Lovelock, as chairs of the College of Fellows, and there are other people as well, and I'm probably not acknowledging them, but tremendous amount of background work gone into this, an imperfect thing. But something which will take us to a place where there'll be exceptions. There'll be people that get their certification and provide a report of the nature that Sue was talking about, but that will become the exception that proves the rule. That's the goal. All of these systems are imperfect in their nature, but I think it's a tremendous step for the SIA. For me, coming in and looking strategically at where we're going as an organisation and building our overall credibility for the profession, this is a really critical part of the puzzle. It's one of the key component parts of that puzzle. So thanks very much, Sue, for your presentation today. Please express your